Okay, welcome back to the Success Money Marriage Podcast. I'm Steve Siebold.
And I'm Dawn Siebold.
And on today's episode, we're going to talk about exploring shared values. And here's what I mean exactly. Look at, examine, identify what your value system really is. I think this is something we ought to learn in school. We don't really learn in school, not even college, Like, what do you value? What are your value system? So what are the things you value most? What is the structure of your value system? First, I'll give you an example of mine. I'm very committed to telling the truth. I like telling the truth. I think there's a ring truth has to it. As a speaker, as a writer, I like to hit it hard. I like to tell the truth. My version of it, I suppose, I guess you could say it that way subjectively, but I don't like to mince words. I like to hit it direct. I value that because I like when speakers do that with me, and I like and even if I'm offended, I want to know that's just one of my values as an example. Okay, I value loyalty as well. Loyalty in people, loyalty in products, those kinds of things. That would be an example of mine. How about yours?
Yeah, I think, obviously telling the truth, being honest. There's a lot of levels of that, right? So being honest within your relationship and being honest with yourself. I think a lot of times people think, oh yeah, everybody wants to be honest. Well, what are we honest about? Like what I spent on American Express or, where I was last night, So I think obviously that was one of the single things that hit Steve and I when we were very young that was very important to both of us to just be upfront, and which is different than being honest, being upfront, and saying, different things. So I think we could have a whole session just on the honesty. But one of the things that that I find is that we had in common when we first met is just caring for the other person with knowing in mind I'm going to make mistakes and things are going to happen, and that moral of respecting each other. I think for me, the respect when we first met for each other and the situations we were both in or the childhoods we grew up in, the respect for me was very important. And so we have that same level of respect for each other and have continued to grow with that, I think.
Yeah, I think that part of what you want to at least explore is obviously your common values that you have. And then probably everyone wants to be honest. I mean, I'm being kind of general. Everyone probably values that.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of levels.
There are a lot of levels to it. There's
some things you don't have to be exactly honest.
Absolutely.
Because he's not exactly honest. It's only when I find the Dairy Queen shake cup in the trash can that I find out he's been to Dairy Queen.
And that's why I try to never bring it home.
And he's never good at it because he can't hide the bag. I mean, how simple would it be?
Normally I eat it at Dairy Queen and throw it away at Dairy Queen because then I'm just, where have you been? I'm like, I don't know.
I'm going to see it in the trash.
Yeah.
Did you have Dairy Queen today? Nope.
No, I did
not. Steven, I saw the cup in the trash.
Luna.
No, I'm teasing.
But I think that the point is that if you identify what your values are to the point of writing them down, especially if you're looking at it, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast and you're actually exploring going into business with your spouse or your significant other, and you're saying, should we really do this? Because there are downsides to it. There's no question about it. You're making your relationship much more complex. Now, you're also giving yourself some real advantages that you can't even buy if the relationship is solid. But there are struggles. It's not perfect. It's not roses and sunshine all the time, for sure. But I mean, looking at your values, because it's really important. Like, one of the things that I value that we talked about before we got married, almost 40 years ago, was that I don't think we said it like this. We were kids. I mean, really, we were, young. But we kind of agreed that we were going to operate as a unit, that we would live together and work together and play together, and and not that we were together 24 hours a day, but that we wouldn't go one way, she wouldn't go one way and I wouldn't go another on anything. We had to come together and agree on things for the most part. Even if we agreed to disagree, we weren't going to go off in different directions. Now, did we always follow it? No, I mean, we made mistakes along the way, mostly Dawn, but
he wishes.
but the point is that I always valued that, because especially when you're together that much, you have to operate, I think, as a unit. And that's one of the things I really value is that I know she's going to be there no matter what, in terms of, when things get tough. And that's really when especially in business and in life, that's when you need someone to be there.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I find that is unusual in some couples is I guess this just goes back to the respect, but, we don't make major decisions decisions without each other. And not that we've ever had to say there's a limit on how much money you can spend without checking with me, or there's a, booking a trip with your buddies and not telling me, or whatever it is. We don't make major decisions without running it by each other. And I can't tell you how many couples we've talked to that this is an issue. They think, they want to be, I don't know, I can't even consider making a major decision without asking you. And then I think there's a lot of people who are divorced out there, I think over 50%, and they get into a blended relationship with families blended, and they start making decisions by themselves. Or maybe you've been divorced so long and you're so used to making decisions by yourself, and you're not back in that following path of having to, get that opinion of the other person before you make a decision. But, if you are out there and that is an issue with you, whether it's in business, making a decision, or making a personal decision, that's one of those things that I think separates that relationship, is because you're not thinking of asking your partner before you make a major decision. So I would just take that into consideration as part of one of your values, is not making a decision, because that's not only hurtful for the other person, but it I think will put a huge stress on that relationship, because where does it stop?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that where you started, I'd like to pick up on, and that's respect. And I think that's another shared value that we have, is that, I've always had so much respect for you. I mean, and I still do to this day more respect than I ever had, because I know you better. And that's from experience. It's not because I have to, because we're married or we're business partners or we're both. It's just because I've watched you live your life, and I've watched you in business, and, more than anyone else ever has your whole life. And, I just respect you more than anyone in the world, and I always have, and that never changed. And my point of saying that is, besides just saying it, is I would challenge everyone listening, watching to this, to before you decide if you're deciding to go into a business, ask yourself, do you have that kind of respect for your partner? Because, and I want to get your take on this as a woman, because I know as a guy, for a lot of years, having friends and stuff, and watching people get married, divorced, and in between, and second marriages and third marriages, which I'm not putting that down. But I'm just saying that I've had a lot of friends get married for all the wrong reasons. Matter of fact, I would say I've had more friends get married for the wrong reasons than for the right reasons.
Me too.
Okay, so
Me too.
yeah.
That doesn't go just for the men. For the women, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell they don't really, when you're talking to them, they're attracted to the person, and that's good. Physically, and that's good, and maybe some other reasons and whatever it is, but you can tell there's a lack of respect, and that always just frightens me, because I'm thinking you're never going to last if you don't have that. I mean, because times are going to get tough in business, in life, in personal life, in relationship.
Right.
It's cyclical. That's just life. You're going to have tough times. I mean, it's just what it is. So can you sustain that relationship? Can you handle some resistance?
Right.
Because you're going to get it. And you got to plan for the resistance, not for the good times, but for the resistance.
Well, I mean, I think so too. You have to think about if you're thinking about going into business with your partner and you don't have that respect. I mean, I have several more friends, like you said, that don't respect their husband's work ethic. And I think that one of the values that we didn't even talk about when we first got together was, what's your work ethic, and how well do you fare under stress, and how often do you want to work, and especially because if you're going to be partners, that work ethic, I mean, not all your values have to match, right? I mean, you have values that I don't match, and I have values you don't match, but the main core ones I think have to for you to stay in business together. Yeah. And one of them I would discuss before you start joining that partnership in business is what's your work ethic, because if that doesn't match, one person's going to be pissed off all the time.
Oh yeah, because
if you set the expectation up, like, hey, you know what, I'm working, and I do. I mean, I work a lot, but I go, Stephen, I'm playing tennis on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right. And that's my schedule, and that's what I'd like to do, and you agree with it. If it's set up ahead of time, then But if someone's coming to you and saying, I have a strong work ethic, and at 5 o'clock they walk out the door, that's going to create frustration.
Then I wouldn't go into business with that person. There's no way you could, because you're going to break up.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Wouldn't you think?
Absolutely.
Because that's one thing.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
When we were in college, and I had a scholarship in college, and so I had my things paid for, and Dawn did, and she worked her way through. And I think you had some grants or something, but you still had to
have a job. Yeah, I had to pay for it. Yeah. She
worked at Burger King one year. You worked at Burger King.
That's before we had credit card loans that you kids have now.
Yeah, college wasn't $1 million. either.
Well, it also wasn't $1 million, but we
my
didn't have college loans like you guys can get now. We had to apply for financial aid.
Yeah, that's right. You did.
I applied for financial aid. Nowadays, you can get a credit card. Anyone can walk on a campus and get a credit card. So,
well, back then, the University of South Alabama is where we went to college together, and it was about, if I remember correctly, it was $4,500 a year.
Yeah, it was about $2,000 a quarter.
It's probably $45,000 now.
I know.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I remember Dawn getting a job at Burger King, and I always felt a little guilty because I was an athlete, I was a tennis player, and I was, going to school like she was. But she was working, and I remember she worked at Burger King, and I'd wait for her in the car. I'd pick her up, when we had our apartment together. With the second year, I think we were at school, or third year. The second year, I think it was. And I'd pick her up, and I'd watch her, sweeping the floor, mopping the floor up at Burger King, and then she'd get in the car, and she smelled like fries. Always smell. I mean,
but
fries,
I was a good mopper.
You were.
I was a good mopper.
But you smelled like fries, and I love Burger King fries. I like McDonald's better, but Burger King's are pretty
yeah,
good.
We told that story in one of the earlier podcasts where
fries.
That was when we were in the dorm.
You couldn't shake my whole car smelled like fries.
That was the second year I was waitressing at Applebee's.
Yeah.
The first year was when I was at Burger King, and you guys might remember it's one of our earlier podcasts. My girlfriends literally made me undress outside. I had to go to the gym, take my Burger King clothes off to get up in the dorm room.
I remember picking you up though.
Yeah, and no, because I smelled so much like French fries. They're like, you can't walk into our dorm.
It was a good smell, but it smelled up the whole car. It was crazy.
Awful.
But the main point was that, besides that, was just that, I saw her work and I thought, well, you can't. It's hard not to be influenced by watching someone live their life, And I mean, not that it was that conscious. I mean, I knew we were going to go into. We started a business that year almost. I think it was that year, right? Together.
First year in college.
We've been in business ever since.
Right.
And we had, we struggled in the beginning, and we both worked really hard. And Dawn had a job for a while, and I had a job for a while, teaching. Well, a business job. Well, not a job.
Okay,
I could have gotten one.
For our audience,
I could have gotten one.
Getting a job means you actually work for someone else.
Well, I mean, I had clients, I had customers.
You were an entrepreneur, Steve.
I worked.
I'm not saying just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you're not working.
You have to criticize me.
I'm not criticizing you. I'm supporting your entrepreneurship.
Hurting my feelings.
But it's not actually a job. People have jobs. It's a different thing.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
you're a very hard worker.
Point is, I worked hard. And, and I saw that, but, then we went on, and then we had our first very large scale success where, we're living in the penthouse apartment on the water and, everything. All of a sudden we had more money around us than we'd ever seen in our lives, which was great because we worked hard and everything. And then we had to walk away because of ethical issues with partners and all kinds of another story in itself. But bottom line is, we went from the penthouse to living in a spare room in my parents' house, which is not a huge house. It wasn't small, but it wasn't huge. 10 by, basically it was a 10 by 10 room.
Right. Yeah, and we were probably like 30
30
years
and we had just become from being multimillionaires basically to walking away, and it was emotionally a really tough thing, but financially, literally, I was so stressed out when we finally walked away and had to walk away and lose everything we had earned, which was a lot. And we walked away, and I literally slept. I've never done this before or since. I slept an entire day, a night, and then a day, a whole day. Like I woke up.
Some people
once.
call that 24 hours.
I mean, literally, though. But I wasn't.
A whole night and a whole day.
I wasn't sick.
Hours.
I was stressed. I mean, I was stressed, absolutely the most stressed out. That's probably the most stressful day I ever had in my life because I didn't know what the hell we were going to do. And I remember waking up, but I don't know, 5 or 6, it's a long time ago, but 5 or 6 o'clock, and you came home, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I got a job." And I said, "You got a job?" She said, "Yeah, I'm working at Applebee's. I got a job." And I mean, that was in one day. I mean, I was just so stressed out because of what had happened. It was a whole story. But bottom line is, she woke up, went out and got a job, and we went from she was waitressing. We were living in a penthouse apartment on the ocean. We had millions of dollars in equity in a company. So we went from the sort of the penthouse to the outhouse kind of a thing, as they say. But bottom line was that didn't surprise me that you did that. And the very next day, a couple days later, I started to look for teaching tennis and got back out and finally. I did. You got it faster than I did, but I went out there and got it, and we both worked. And the point is that we didn't even really think about it. I didn't ever question whether we were going to come back. We knew we'd make all the money back, which we eventually did. But I knew that she would do that, and that in terms of values, I tell you, without that, I wouldn't. I don't think people should be in business.
I don't either. And just to close my part out, what I would recommend is, writing down your top 5. trust,
call.
respect,
That's good advice.
Time management, because time management, some people hate that.
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but I'm disappointed when people aren't on time because I think it's rude and disrespectful for my time. But if that's an important thing to you, write down time management, whatever the value is,
Right.
again, work ethic, write down your top 5, get your partner to write down their top 5 and have a deep conversation on whether you can connect with with all of those.
Yeah, because if you don't, just keep thinking to yourself, when it gets tough, what does this look like? What does this partnership look like? Not when it's good, not when you're, doing well, but when it's tough, when the stress is just off the charts, what does that partnership look like? Does it have the strength to resist breaking apart? Can it handle, how much resistance can it handle? On a scale of 1 to 10. And I've always been confident that ours could always handle a 10. And it always has. And it's been through.
And it's tested.
And it's been tested through 35 years of doing business in 10 countries around the world and having offices and employees and partners and clients and bad deals and good deals and ups and downs and millions and losing millions and making millions. I mean, we've had some pretty extreme things. Not as extreme as some people.
Sure.
But certainly for a small business group, some extreme things.
Sure.
And I've never had to question that. And that's not something I'm pumping Don up with, or the audience up with. That's the way it is. So ask yourself, write down the top 5. I like that's good advice. And just think about these things. Talk about these things with your spouse, partner, potential partner, and see where you go with it. Because boy, that's going to be a real important one. Don't you
I
think?
agree.
Yeah,
probably the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you listening, watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Okay, bye-bye.